Welcome back to Cheddar, everyone. As the country shifts towards reopening, much of the focus is on testing. New York City has announced that it partnered with Salesforce for their ambitious contact tracing program. Joining me now is Niki Christoff, who is the head of government affairs at Salesforce. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got to dive right in with this. Tell us how this deal with New York came about.
Yes, well, thanks for having me today, Brad. Let me first of all, it's great to have the opportunity to spend a few minutes talking about what Salesforce is doing for our communities, but also for our customers. And what you touched on, contact tracing, actually brings me to a larger issue, which is outdated government technology. So, anyone who's ever interacted with a government agency at a state, local, or federal level knows that those public sector employees don't have the tools that they really need, the tools that the private sector has to get the job done with the efficiency and the scale that the private sector does in many cases. What we have learned over the past few weeks, and in fact, Politico wrote an article about this over the weekend, is that the manual contact tracing happening at county and local levels is often happening on paper with Excel spreadsheets. Faxes are being sent to the Centers for Disease Control with this critical data. And one of the partnerships that has been announced is with New York City. We'll also be partnering with the state of Rhode Island and the state of California to provide some digital backbone to their manual contact tracing. So it's our Salesforce platform, CRM, and we don't have any other news to announce today, but we're certainly working with other states and cities to see how we can provide better tools for those public health officials that are tracking and tracing this disease.
A lot of those phase by phase approaches have been announced or are already in the works. How soon might we see some of those new partnerships announced?
Well, so like I said, we don't have any other public sector partnerships to announce today, but one thing I would like to talk about is Work.com. So this is a platform that we announced a suite of products last week. It is for any employees or organizations that are going to be having workers go back into offices. And I mentioned this, it's related because one of the features it has is contact tracing just within the organization itself. So the virus isn't going to go away by the time people start to open their doors to employees. Every business is going to have a set of custom solutions based on their geography, the demographics of their employee base, what the workspace looks like. So work.com is really a platform to create a command center. It will have things like the ability to contact trace, to look at health and safety data of employees. If companies decide to do temperature checks, it will have flex time. You can schedule your deep cleaning of your offices. So it really is kind of a universal tool for any of these folks who are looking to open their doors and want to do it with safety first, but who also have to
Mhm.
face new logistics challenges around reopening their operations.
Absolutely. Well, on the topic of contact tracing that we started with, a big concern of contact tracing is privacy. How is Salesforce ensuring that people's privacy is protected with this program?
So there are two things. Work.com is actually just a private sector solution for companies that are looking at their own organization. And then the work that we're doing, for example, with New York City and with California and with the state of New York, we're really just supporting those manual tracers. So these are the public health officials. It is their job to go out and collect the data on where the virus is and who it's touched on. This is not kind of the automated contact tracing that some technology companies are working on. This is really supporting those public health officials that work for the government who are doing the manual tracing. And like I said, some of them are literally working with pens and papers to do that work.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. On the same kind of vein of privacy, but sticking with privacy as a whole, cloud systems bandwidth, it's being given the ultimate stress test right now, not just for Salesforce, but across the spectrum as we're watching work from home, this era really requiring more people to be able to access cloud systems that their companies employ so that they can stay connected. How do you maintain privacy standards for your customers as well during this time where the system is getting a lot more capacity than it's used to?
Yes. So we actually, the Salesforce government affairs team has been focused on a federal privacy law for the United States for more than 2 years now. It's one of our top priorities in Washington. It has not changed as a priority, although the likelihood of a federal bill being passed is perhaps a little more remote now. The reason it's important to have a federal standard is right now companies are navigating 50 different states, not to mention the different continents and countries that they operate in. So even just having a set standard of what those practices and a framework should be would help companies. And we've been urging Congress to do this for many, many months. And in fact, we had been hopeful something could get done this Congress. I remain optimistic it still could. But really, the law needs to be set so that there is a rubric for everybody to follow so they know what the expectations are. And so customers know what their protections are and so that they don't shift by zip code.
And you were part of the Salesforce team that helped to secure and distribute PPE to communities that needed it. Tell us about how Salesforce was able to help source PPE. This has been something that has been a tall task for hospitals, some of the major cities that even need it as they've been competing against each other. What makes Salesforce uniquely positioned to do so?
Salesforce is uniquely positioned to do so just because we did do so. So we are an enterprise technology company. We don't have really a background in supplying medical equipment to hospitals. However, we got a phone call. Our CEO, Mark Benioff, got a phone call from UCSF, which is the hospital system that serves our San Francisco headquarters. At the beginning of March, they knew that they had a dire shortage of protective equipment. So we put together a task force of employees. They figured out how to do this, how to get these supplies, masks, gowns, face shields. We've now provided and donated more than 60 million pieces of PPE, not just to UCSF, but to the state of New York, which we delivered directly to the Javits Center. And then we also made donations to Detroit and to New Orleans. In fact, as you were saying, what gives us a special, unique ability to do this? We don't have one, but we've learned a lot of lessons. Anyone can go to our Salesforce Trailhead portal. It's an online learning portal, and there's actually a free course with videotapes of the employees who actually did this work with their lessons learned. People are going to need PPE not just for healthcare workers, but anyone going back into the workforce will have some degree of need for masks and other protective equipment. And so we've shared what we've learned along the way over the last few weeks.
And then just lastly, while we have you, you're headquartered in California. Major tower offices Salesforce has in London, New York Tower, of course. I used to walk by that every day on my way to Times Square while I was spin moving tourists, and Indianapolis. I'm wondering the deviation of the talks that you're having, or the variation, I should say, of the talks that you're having at Salesforce with other government, local government officials as it comes to reopening the economy, not only as it pertains to your business, but how this could also pertain to some of your partners and clients.
Well, one of the things our CEO, Mark Benioff, has said over the last few weeks, which I think is just sort of absolutely the right thing, is this is our first pandemic. It's his first pandemic. So we are navigating the shifting sands just like every other business. I know that there are different regulations in different parts of the country, different geographies. And so, again, I'll just point people to work.com. It's a great resource, not just the product for our customers, but there are resources for free from experts, from epidemiologists. It has guidelines on reopening from organizations like the Business Roundtable here in Washington, just to provide more information. Because as you said, there's disparity across different jurisdictions in different countries. So we're just creating a space with tools, features, apps, but also just information that's freely available.
All right, Niki Christoff, who is the head of government affairs at Salesforce. Thank you so much for taking the time here today.